Welcome back, ladies and gents, to the BCB Basketball Podcast. I'm Aaron Washington, and this time I'm coming at you with a solo podcast. If you don't mind me rambling a little bit for the next 45 minutes or so, stay tuned. It's going to be a good one. And we have 5 teams on the docket today that we're going to discuss. So, if you've been with the podcast for any extended period of time, you will know that every year I have an annual division preview segment. Basically, what I like to do is take 6 weeks and look at every team from those divisions. So over 6 weeks, I cover all 6 divisions, 5 teams in each division. You do the math, 30 teams. So that's how I get to cover every team in the league from start to finish, from east, west, each coast, all over the place. Just want to see what they've done in this offseason and how they're looking going into the next season, which in this case would be 1920. So we're done with the summer league coverage. You won't have to worry about me rambling anymore about that. I've got my thoughts out there. I have a YouTube video about it. And I also have a bunch of content on my social media you can check out if you want to see more about that. But in the meantime, let's dive into this. So this year, the first division I'm going to cover is going to be the Southeast Division. So for the Southeast, they're going through a time of transition. The big teams that have made some huge moves on this offseason are the Hawks and the Heat. And we'll get to them here very shortly. So the Hawks are going to be the first team on tap for today. We're going to cover them right now and see how they ended up finishing last season and how they can project to possibly improve for next season and exactly how much, dictated by the moves they made this summer. So to kick things off, we're going to go with the Atlanta Hawks, local team. Feel like it's only right. And we're going to look at what they've done here. So going back to last season, let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's get going in the time machine to see how things have changed for them. So to start things off, we've got to know and keep in mind that this team was not entirely great ending last season's campaign. So for this year, or last season, they ended up 29-53, 35% of their games they won. They were about 12 games back from the playoffs, so they weren't really close to obtaining a playoff berth even in the East. 113.3 points per game, and they allowed 119.4 points per game. Going to the simple rating system, which is an all-encompassing number just to allow us to see how good a team fared last season, it is negative 6.06, which is not very good. That's just a little bit better than the Bulls, Cavs, Knicks ended up, but we know how bad those teams were last season. So they ended last season on a pretty good note, actually. The Hawks have made pretty huge strides, definitely improved their winning percentage over the prior season, and that's mainly because they brought in a franchise-altering talent in Trae Young. We didn't know that at the time, but Trae projects to be the quote-unquote savior of the Hawks franchise. He is quickly evolving into a dynamic point guard that can absolutely change the game with his shooting and passing. We'll get to him more in a second. But, yeah, the Hawks improved slightly. They finished 24-58 in their last season with Coach Bud. That was dead last in the Eastern Conference. So they went from dead last to the 12th seed in the Eastern Conference. So 5-game improvement in the win column, pretty good. What you're looking for from a rebuilding team like the Hawks is just improvement, steady improvement. You don't want to see them backtrack. You don't want to see guys have stagnation. You want to see guys keep elevating their game year in and year out. And the Hawks did that to some degree. Trae Young came in. It was dynamite from day one. But John Collins, boy, what can we say about John Collins? His defense may not be quite there yet, but this is a guy who you can really build around in the front court. He is not going to be a shot blocker. You just have to know what you're going to get from him. Last season, he ended up with averages of 19.5 points per game and 9.8 boards. So he was this close to a 2010. And if you're a fan of Zach Randolph, God bless Zach Randolph, miss watching him play, you will know that the 2010 benchmark is nothing to be taken lightly. If you're getting 20 and 10, you are an all-star type player at the very least, and then you're approaching all-NBA territory. So 56% from the field. His three-point percentage actually went went up to 34.8. Basically, if we round up, it's 35%, which is very solid from a power forward. So John the Baptist, as he's come to be called now, is making huge strides. We can only imagine what year three is going to bring from him. And he is another one of those building blocks for the Hawks. So that's last season. What are they going to do this time around? What's new for them? What have they changed? So going down the transaction list for the Hawks, it's pretty expansive. It encompasses a lot. They made trades. They signed free agents. They've done a lot. So, and then of course you have the draft, which is a huge, huge development for them. So the Hawks did not end up with the number one pick as some of us projected. They had a 10% chance of grabbing Zion in the draft. That didn't happen. But what they did do is trade in some picks, move up to fourth, and pick DeAndre Hunter. What else did they do? They drafted Cam Reddish at 8, and then they traded Jackson Hayes, which was their 8th pick. Technically, the timing gets all kind of weird here if you really look at it. But they had the 8th overall pick, but they traded him in order to move up to get DeAndre Hunter at number 4. So they traded Hayes, and then they also traded the 14th pick, I believe, which turned into Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We know that that is who the Pelicans took, technically speaking. But they traded those two guys to move up to 4th, and they actually obtained that pick from the Brooklyn Nets. So all this is kind of confusing, but if we really boil it down to the key components, the Hawks obtained Cam Reddish and DeAndre Hunter through the draft. We're not going to go super in depth with who these guys are. That may be saved for another blog post or a whole nother podcast. But basically, you have DeAndre Hunter, a prime 3-and-D player who might have a limited ceiling, and then you have a guy like Cam Reddish who comes in having an up and down season at Duke, struggling handling responsibilities of being the 3rd best player on the court. He wasn't used to that, but I have high hopes for him. And even though his resume is a little more inconsistent compared to DeAndre Hunter, I think we can all agree this guy can turn out to be something special if he really harnesses his gifts and learns how to be the best version of himself possible. So they have a lower ceiling, higher floor player in Hunter, and then they have a higher ceiling, lower floor player in Cam Reddish. So they're covering all the bases here if you think about it. It would have been nice to see them get Jackson Hayes, who is a shot blocker, to go along with John Collins. But in the meantime, I mean, they'll be okay. They have enough players on the wings and the front and the backcourt to help compensate for that. So moving on, I mean, they got those 2 draft picks, which is a pretty nice move in itself. But they also brought back, they got Alan Crabb, who they got from Brooklyn, with a 2020 first-round pick, which is top 4 protected. So you bring in Alan Crabb, okay, fine. He's a good shooter. He's not super dynamic on the ball. He can come off some screens, good stuff. But they weren't done. They traded Kent Bazemore to Portland for Evan Turner. Cool. They went out and got Chandler Parsons from the Memphis Grizzlies. All right. They signed Jabari Parker. We can't forget about Jabari Parker. This is a key move here. So in that Chandler Parsons trade, they got him, and they traded out Solomon Hill and Miles Plumlee, who are 2 other bad contracts. So 2 for 1 basically in that deal. So you go back up, Jabari Parker was signed for a 2-year, $13 million contract, which includes a 2020 player option. So Jabari has a little more power in this contract than he did with the Wizards. If you remember correctly, last season, the Wizards signed him to a 2-year, $40 million deal, but the second year was a team option. Very smart thinking, Washington. You don't want to have a guy like that on your books at $20 million, plays no defense, and his offense is up and down for the Wizards. It just wasn't the right fit for him. So Jabari Parker played himself into a less valuable contract, but he holds the power in year 2 to come back for the Hawks or not. It's up to him. So you have Jabari Parker, you have Chandler Parsons, you have Hunter, you have you traded Bazemore, you bring in Evan Turner. So their front court is loaded, absolutely loaded. You still have John Collins on board. Vince Carter hasn't quite made up his mind where he's going to come back. Then you still have Alan Crabb, who can play the three position if he moves up a position. So, I mean, they have so many front court players that it kind of worries me a little bit. I mean, sure, DeAndre Hunter won't have to come in and do everything for them. That's nice. He can kind of develop at his own pace. Same thing with Reddish. But at the same time, with the Hawks, you want these guys to get their reps. And if you have Evan Turner and Parsons and Crabbe and Parker clogging up those minutes in the lanes, I mean, I think at the end of the day, someone's going to be unhappy. Give it about a month or two, maybe 6 weeks. You heard it here first. One of those guys is going to be discontent with the situation. One of those guys, I want to say, is Jabari Parker. Probably ends up coming out. If it's not him, it's going to be Evan Turner. Evan Turner is used to being a starter when he was up in Portland. He gets the minutes. He gets the point forward position, which I guess if they play him in that capacity, he can end up getting the minutes he wants because there's no clear-cut backup point guard to Trae Young as of right now. So if you do it like that, Evan Turner's okay. But still, Parsons and Hunter, all those other guys, you have to incorporate them somehow. So Parsons, I would say he doesn't get much time. And then Jabari Parker, just depends on how much of a negative he is on defense. Because if you think about it, you already have Trae Young and John Collins, who are both huge negatives on defense. You can't bring in another player like Jabari Parker and expect there to be any semblance of a defensive game. It won't work. So from that perspective, they're really going to have to get creative with the minutes. I fully trust Lloyd Pierce to get things together there, to continue to build that culture and keep everybody on the same page. He knows that guys like Jabari Parker, they're not in the long-term plans, right? This is just a bridge to get from out of the playoffs, lottery team, subpar, to where they want to go, which is contender. He is filling the gap. Same thing with Alan Crabb. Same thing with Evan Turner. They're not going to be there long-term. Parsons is a expiring contract, which is going to lead to massive amounts of cap space in 2020. So right now, all they're trying to do is just bite the bullet, swallow their pride, take this money back because they weren't going to sign any free agents anyway. So you might as well use that money in a meaningful way to basically make an investment for next year. So all things considered, I think Atlanta had a very good offseason here. They made the right moves. It wasn't excellent, but it was good, which is all you can ever want from this team. They didn't make any dumb long-term decisions that could cripple this team and cripple their growth. Playing time is going to be hard to come by for the new guys, but that's not a big deal in year one. You don't expect those guys to be a huge positive anyway. That's just not how it works with rookies. They need time to grow, to mature, and get used to the culture and the system they're playing in. So for right now, things are good in Atlanta. I will be attending several games. I'm sure if any of my friends are watching this that I've had on podcasts I've interacted with, you guys are going to State Farm Arena. It's going to be buzzing. Zion or no Zion, which actually on October 4th he's going to be coming to town. Got to check that one out. But these are fun times to be a Hawks fan. I'm not one in particular, but hey, hometown team, why not go check them out and support them? If they're not playing a particular team, I'll let you figure out who that is. But for right now, they're looking good. Now, we do have to keep in mind that they lost Dwayne Dedmon. Dwayne Dedmon is one of the key inside-out bigs in this league, 7 feet legitimate big man with range and shot blocking ability. The Sacramento Kings picked him up, brought him in to replace Willie Cauley-Stein. Good signing. Pretty nice value contract. I believe he got a 2-year deal. I'll have to double check that, but losing Dedmon is going to be key. So right now, going back to their depth chart at center, John Collins can play the center. I believe Bruno Fernando, who they also drafted, can play center, and then you have Damian Jones coming over from Golden State. So they're kind of shallow. Alex Len, can't forget about Alex Len. Alex Len is still on board, and he can play the center position. So I would expect Alex Len's probably going to be the day one starter. They could tweak things as we go. Maybe Damian Jones steps in if Alex Len takes a dip. But for right now, I mean, Alex Len is your starter. It's like, for a team that's still trying to elevate and reach the playoffs, that's fine. You're still a young team. You're still figuring things out. But like we keep saying, this is not going to change overnight. The Hawks are doing the right things, but they're not ready for that big jump. Some people have said that the Hawks are going to make the playoffs. I'm going to doubt that right now. I think they can make another good 5-game improvement, but even 5 games over last year's win total is not going to put you in the playoff picture, even in the Eastern Conference. Last year, the 8th seed, I believe, was Orlando. They weren't at 34 games, won, which is where the Hawks would be if they improved by 5 games. It takes some time to get this stuff to really take hold. So the Magic, they got blown out by the Raptors in the playoffs. They weren't even, up there in the win column. They were at, it's actually the Pistons. The Pistons were in the 8th seed, and they were at 41 wins. So do the math. Even if the Hawks improve by 6 games, that would be a nice improvement for that team. 6 games over last year's win total. That puts them at 35. 35 is still 6 less games won than the Pistons last season. And we know the Pistons weren't that great of a team. So doing the math, I wouldn't say the Hawks made the playoffs. They could jump into maybe the 10th seed at 39, 40, 38, possibly mid-30s, upper 30s. I could see that. But let's pump the brakes a little bit. The Hawks still have a little ways to go before they're a true contender for the playoffs. But I wish them the best, and I think they are going to make a nice little jump this season, just as they did last season. So moving on in the Southeast here, we're just getting into in the thick of things. We're moving on to a more pessimistic situation here with the Hornets. God bless those Hornets fans. If there's anybody left, I feel for you. Stay strong. Things are going to get better eventually. But for this season, it's going to be a rough ride. In general, looking at some of their transactions, the Charlotte Hornets drafted P.J. Washington, lost Kemba Walker, lost Frank Kaminsky, and acquired Terry Rozier. So at a glance, not the best offseason. They lost one of their key players, which by all accounts was the best player that Charlotte has ever seen. The Charlotte Hornets had one of the great point guards in our league. Kemba Walker is as shifty as they come, smart player, much improved shooter, good playmaker, and just one of the great talents in the NBA. He's gone. Who did Hornets have to replace him, if you really think about it? Kid Gilchrist, Marvin Williams, Bismack Biyombo, Blake Monk, Nicholas Batum. I don't see any of those guys really contributing at a high level. Just telling the truth here. I don't like to be one of those pessimistic guys, like to view things in a positive manner. But when we really get down to the nitty-gritty of it all, we can't expect the Hornets to do anywhere near what they did last season. So last season, they didn't even make the playoffs with Kemba Walker. They didn't do a lot of that with Kemba Walker overall the years he was there. I think they only made about 2 playoff appearances, and they lost in the first round both times. So the Hornets ended up with a 39-43 overall record, 47% win percentage, 21 games back of the number 1 seed, about 2 games back of the Pistons for the 8th seed. So they were this close to the playoffs, close but not close enough. 110.7 points per game, and they allowed 111.8. Simple rating score, system score of negative 1.32. So a lot better than negative 6.06 like the Hawks were, but that's not saying much. The Hornets have always struggled with Kemba Walker off the floor, and they've never actually brought in a decent backup. You think about years past. Malik Monk came in to replace him. They just haven't had many good solid guards. Michael Carter-Williams, Shelvin Mack, I believe. All those guys are like below replacement level. So you can't expect to drop off from Kemba to below replacement level point guard and maintain a level of success that you're accustomed to. It just doesn't work like that. So all those moves together puts the Hornets in a difficult predicament. So, the Hornets are looking at a time of a complete rebuild. And we knew this was coming if Kemba left. You could look at all the numbers without Kemba Walker. He was one of the great really great difference makers for a team in recent history. No team, or very few teams, got as better as much saw as much improvement with one guy on the court as opposed to off than the Hornets did with Kemba Walker. He was that big of a difference maker. So who is their next best player? Is it Terry Rozier? Is it Nicholas Batum? I don't really know, but in any case, they're kind of screwed because those guys are average, not bad. I mean, they're pretty good. The only glimmers of hope on this roster are Miles Bridges, who's going into year 2. He had a great summer league. I watched him live. Uh, he's improving. His confidence is there. His shot is improving. Willie Hernan-Gomez isn't bad. PJ Washington's on board for 4 years for a nice rookie deal. Malik Monk still has some untapped scoring potential. So they have a few young players, but none of those guys are really going to make a huge difference. Even Miles Bridges, who might be the best young player they have right now, can't be expected to come in and make a huge difference. It's not there. So the only hope for the Hornets is to, I don't want to say tank, that's not a good word to use, but basically come in, be competitive, right? Like the Nets were. Let's look at the Nets the season before last. They came in, they were competitive. They fought. They lost a good amount of games, but they fought. That's pretty much all you can hope for the Hornets. You want to see guys get better. Ideally, the young players, those veterans, you pretty much know what you're going to get from them because they're all established. They've been in the league for 4, 5, 6, whatever, how many years. But you would like to see Miles Bridges take a leap. You would like to see PJ Washington come in and be a difference maker off the bat. You would like to see Dwayne Bacon and Devontae Graham get some run and get better. So these young players are going to have a lot of time to get things wrong, to get things right, and to figure out who they are at their core. And Terry Rozier is going to have a lot of room to operate because, again, behind him, who's their backup point guard? Shelvin Mack is a free agent still. He might not come back. I don't know who's going to be behind Terry Rozier. Terry Rozier is going to get at least 34, I would think, minutes a game. At least. It's going to be at least in the low 30s because he's the guy to replace Kemba, which is depressing in itself, but you don't have anybody else behind him to really pick up the slack. So pretty much that's their only option. That's all they can really do right now. He has to come in and do what he has to do for them. Terry Rozier has never been that great of a basketball player. He's been nice. He's had his moments. Last season he came in. He was a good player for them in their playoff run. But Terry Rozier is not one of those guys you look at and you say, wow, he's going to completely change our team around. He's going to come in and just make all the right reads and put up 30 points. Like, you just don't expect that from Terry Rozier. I'm sorry. He's not the most consistent player. So he's going to come in. He's going to be good and do some nice things. But for the money he's making, let's take a look at that for a second because this salary is it's a lot to handle. So he signed a pretty hefty extension. He came in and basically it was a sign and trade to get Kemba to the Celtics. So the Celtics really did the Hornets a favor here. But he signed a 3-year, $56.7 million contract with Charlotte. So in that trade, they also got a 2020 second-round pick for Kemba Walker. So, I mean, hey, at least they got a second-round pick out of this, You got to look at the bright side here. You can't just fall into the depths of darkness. You have to find positives where you can. But here's another positive. His contract is descending. So as he gets older, you would think he gets better because he's still a pretty young player. I mean, he's only 25 years old. You can still get a little bit better here. But 19.8, just shy of 20 million this season. That's going to hurt. 18.9, basically 19 million next season, and then 17.9 the season after. So his contract is going to descend by 1 million every season. So coupled with a cap increase, it's going to lighten the load for them over the next couple of years. So they're stuck with Rozier for a while. There's no player options. There are no options, period. So Rozier is going to come in and he is going to be there for the long haul. until 2022. You're throwing your chips in on a player who is basically unproven at this point. Career averages of 9 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. Under 40% shooting from the field. 35% from three, around the league average. 78.5% from the free throw line. Just average in every way. You don't see a guy that commands $20 million. The Celtics really, they did Charlotte a favor by giving him that pick, but ultimately they're saying, hey, Rozier for Kemba Walker. Oh yes, let's do that one right there. No questions asked. Let's get it done. And Scary Terry, I mean, he's a reliable player. I mean, he's durable. He played 79 games last season, but other than that, I mean, I loved him as a backup player. I loved him as a spark plug, come in and make a difference off the bench. I don't love him as a starter whatsoever. He's just not going to be all that great. So somehow the Hornets thought that the best way to replace Kemba Walker was to bring in a point guard who he's averaged less points per game in year 4 than year 3, and not a very efficient shooter. So good luck to them. We'll see how that works out. Moving on here, the Washington Wizards. A reoccurring theme in this conference, in this division, is that a lot of these teams are either in a state of flux, they're stagnant, or they're just not very good. They're average or below average. It's pretty easy to see that this is the worst division in the NBA. There's no question about it. You go from top to bottom, you look at these rosters. Who are the really standout players? Kemba is gone. John Wall is hurt. The Magic's best player is Vucevic. The Hawks' best player is Trae Young. Very good, but, I mean, he's not a superstar yet. The Heat, Jimmy Butler, but he wasn't there last year. So this is just kind of a dry conference if we're looking at sheer talent, but there are possibilities here. There are some intriguing pieces, and that's what we have to look at here. So for the Wizards, what has DC done lately? They re-signed Thomas Bryant to a 3-year, $25 million contract. For Thomas Bryant, he came in and filled the void left by Dwight Howard, who they cut. No more Dwight in Washington. But he saw an opportunity to enter the fold for Washington in dire need of a center who can come in, clean up the glass, be a good rim runner, just like Dwight did. He'll be a pretty good defender. He did all those things. He checked off all the boxes. He had pretty much the best year you can possibly hope for from a guy coming in from the Lakers. Man, the Lakers are just giving guys away at this point. But coming in from the Lakers and making a huge difference. So for Thomas Bryant, going to his numbers, he was an impact player. None of us thought that freaking Thomas Bryant was going to come in and be a nice starter and command consistent minutes. I mean, nobody saw that prior to the season, but this is a second-round pick, drafted 42nd in the 17 draft. He came in last season and averaged 10.5 points and 6.3 rebounds. Yeah, it's not John Collins numbers. It's not 20 and 10. But 10 and 6 is pretty good. That is, in today's day and age, that's almost a starter as a center, basically a starter. So you look at a 6'11", 248-pound center that can reliably roll to the rim, defend the basket, and get on the boards. I'll take that all day. 33.3% from three, 33%. I mean, there's semblance of a three-pointer. So if he can stretch the floor from three, he's even more valuable. So bonus on that part. 61% field goal percentage. So this is a guy that's going to be efficient. He has a semblance of a three-point shot, and he's going to do the dirty work for you. So well done on the Wizards' part. That's actually one signing that did go well for them, as long as he doesn't suffer a sophomore slump. But as of right now, Thomas Bryant, a good signing. The first season of his deal, $8 million, goes to 8.3 and then 8.6. For those averages, I'll take that all day. Very good, very solid. So they're solid on that position at center. For the 4, it gets interesting. Sam Decker's a free agent. He hasn't been re-signed yet. Davis Bertans, I don't even know if he's a 4. Is he a 4? I don't know. Probably interchangeable. Hachimura is a rookie. He's a 4. So their 4 is dry right now. Bobby Portis is gone. Jabari Parker is gone. They don't have a ton of depth at that position. Yamahimi is a center. So if you really look at it, if they resign Sam Decker, if they don't resign Sam Decker, they have Bertans and Hachimura. I think Wagner as well. I think Wagner's a big. They have a few bigs, but Thomas Bryant is their best big. Yamahimi is washed. They're still paying him an absurd $15.4 million. So you're left with Thomas Bryant. He's your best center. So that tells you all you need to know about how this season's going to go. John Wall, God bless his soul as well. $38.1 million. His supermax kicks in, and that's going to hamstring them for a long time. You know, there's not even an option until 2022. Yeah. So the path forward for the Wizards is, hey, just do what you can. Just do what you can. If I'm management, I'm like, hey, I'm working behind the scenes. I'm on the computer. I'm making calls. I'm tinkering with this lineup. I'm seeing if anybody wants to take Wall. Nobody's going to take Wall unless you throw in Beal or a ton of picks, which looking at the pick situation, they actually have most of their picks. The only pick they don't have right now is 2021 second round pick. So they actually could throw in a lot of picks. Maybe it comes to that. We'll see. But as of right now, yeah, you have Beal, you have Bryant, you have Ish Smith, who they signed in free agency. Pretty good deal. 2 years, $12 million. Solid. They lost Thomas Zadaransky, which is one of the better backup point guards in this league. So pickings are slim. The amount of difference makers on this team is very slim. CJ Miles is coming off of surgery. Don't know if he's going to play day one. And yeah, that's their situation. So Hachimura is an interesting proposition. Watching him at Summer League, he started slow, but he ended up playing really well. And if I remember correctly, he made the All-NBA Summer League team, second team, I believe. I was kind of surprised by that. I mean, I thought that he actually had a bad Summer League, but I went backtracked, looked at his numbers, his play. He's actually done very well. Mid-range shot is there. There's a semblance of a post game. He's a smart dude. I mean, I'm pretty sure he wasn't a one-and-done player. So, I mean, Hachimura is one of those guys that I think is going to pick things up pretty quickly. And throughout the life of his rookie contract, time is on your side. You can try to figure out what you have in him, figure out if he's really a difference maker for the long haul, and kind of take it from there. I mean, there's not a ton you can say about the Wizards right now. They made some moves. I mean, they got, CJ Miles and Ish Smith. It's like, all right, cool. Those guys are going to do well. Lost Dwight Howard. That's going to help the locker room. It's going to help your young guys. But you lost Bobby Portis, and Bobby Portis is a nice player. Went over to New York. That's going to hurt. Lost Jabari Parker. That's a good amount of offense that we're thinking about. That's 20 points a game right there, 18 to 20. Zadaransky, very solid player, a good shooter, a good big guard. I believe he's about 6'4". So I'm looking at all the pieces here. Hachimura, probably not going to be the best rookie in this class, if I had to guess, or even one of the 3 best rookies. Could be good, though. So for the Wizards, I would expect them to finish with a pretty mediocre to bad record. It actually could go really sideways. They just have to really pray hard that Bradley Beal doesn't sustain any injuries, or they're going straight to the bottom, the absolute bottom. I would say that Charlotte's going to be worse, and Cleveland. That's it. The Wizards are probably going to end up near the bottom again. The Bulls will probably leapfrog them, and the Hawks. Those are the 2 teams I would expect to overtake them. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I was reading about them earlier today. They haven't even made a conference finals. The Wizards are not a new franchise, ladies and gentlemen. The Washington Wizards have been around for 40 years. They've made 0 conference finals, 0 finals, 0 championships, 0 50-win games. This team won 32 games last season. Their simple rating score was negative 3.3. That is, it's not very good. It's actually, I think, the 5th worst in the entire NBA last season. So this team Hasn't had any kind of extended success in a long time at all. I don't think in their history. So I don't see how they're going to get there anytime soon. Maybe they'll swing a deal for Wall. Maybe Beal will be gone. We're just going to have to wait and see if Bradley Beal accepts that 3-year, $111 million extension. That's going to be the real kicker here. If he doesn't, he's going to be gone at some point. I would think before the next season is over. But we're going to have to wait and see on that one. Moving down south a little bit, down to the Sunshine State, Orlando Magic. Wow, the Orlando Magic surprised me, surprised a whole lot of other people last season by making a run to the playoffs and jumping into the 7th seed at a record of 42-40, 51% of their games won, 107.3 points per game, and they allowed 106.6. So those are actually pretty good numbers from both sides. I mean, 106, that's on the same level as the Jazz. I'm going down the list, and that's almost the highest in the whole league. The Pacers had a lower rating. They allowed less points per game. The Jazz allowed less. And somehow the Nuggets are right there. The Grizzlies, of course, the Grizzlies are always going to be good on defense, but that's about it. Miami, but the Magic were probably one of the top 6 best defensive teams in the league last season. So that went a long way towards propelling them to the playoff race. They had some down stretches, but they had a lot of up stretches. They had a lot of good streaks, and they took advantage of a soft schedule. They did everything they needed to do to make the playoffs. They had a little margin for error because the roster is still pretty flawed, but they did what they had to do. So kudos to Orlando. So 8th in defensive rating and 22nd in offense. So basically that defense brought them there. It was very well done. Very good season for them. So you go down this roster, you look at what they have. Vucevic was probably their biggest acquisition, if you want to call it an acquisition, because he's already on the roster, but he had a very impressive year last year. If we're looking at Vucevic and what you expected from him, just like the Magic in general, you didn't expect him to come out here and drop 20 and 10 and 4.5 assists. I didn't see that coming. Did you? I didn't think so. So for Nikola Vucevic, this is a guy that's jumping in. He's back with the franchise. I don't see a way that the Magic would have made the playoffs without him if he had left. So it's pretty nice that he's back. But 20.8 points per game, 12 boards, and my bad, 3.8 assists. So just about 4 assists a game from the center position is excellent. 36% from 3, again, very good marks for a center, and about 79% from the free throw line. So you can't even expect him to miss free throws as a big man very often. So Nikola Vucevic was an absolutely fantastic player, one of the best players in the East last season, and a first-time All-Star. So much respect to Vucevic, what he was able to do last season, and he's one of the main reasons that team went to the playoffs. Much improved on defense. He wasn't a turnstile like he usually was, and made a huge difference for him. So he is re-signed. He's back on a max deal for 5 years. Straight 5 years, I believe. Going into his contract situation here, it's 4 years. So $28 million, 26, 24, 22. So it drops by $2 million per season every year from now until 2023. So that's going to take him, do a little simple math, 1 + 1 is 2. That brings him to, I want to say, he's going to be at least 30 by the time it's over. So right now he's 28. That's going to bring him through age 32 if we do the math here. So, he's not a huge athletic player. He doesn't rely on his athleticism to make his money. He is more ground bound. He has a lot of good moves. He's a good shooter. So I'd expect him to age nicely to age 32. I don't think he's going to suffer any kind of big drop-offs. He's not going to be a huge liability. He'll be just fine. So that's not a bad contract. He was deserving of a max contract after that performance. One of the best bigs in the league last season. If he can keep it up, he is a fantastic value. So overall, the Magic summer was pretty uneventful. They brought back Michael Carter-Williams. They drafted. I'm gonna butcher his name here. Okiki, I believe. Chuma Okiki. He's on his rookie deal. Re-signed Kem Birch. So Kem Birch is making $6 million over 2 years, next season and in 2021, guaranteed. Very nice, well deserved for him. He had a very nice season. And acquired Al-Farouq Aminu. Al-Farouq Aminu is going to be making $9.2 million next season, 9.7 in 2021, and then a player option for 21-22 at about 10 million. So I don't know if that one it's not going to move the needle really. I mean, they brought in somebody to replace someone to bolster that front court, bolster that wing position. Aminu is a guy's going to come in. He's going to hit some threes with that rainbow shot. He's going to defend 2 3s and 4s pretty reliably. He's going to do a good job at the wing, and he's just going to be a good veteran presence. Nothing big. So they bring back Vucevic. My problem is they're setting themselves up to be the same team as they were last year because the roster is pretty similar. DJ Augustine is back. Fultz, Ross, Fournier, Gordon, Vucevic, Mo Bamba, Jonathan Isaac, Michael Carter-Williams, Iwundu, who they guaranteed his contract, Kem Birch. So most of it is the same. I mean, I don't have much to say in my notes here about what they did. They didn't do all that much. They had a draft pick. They brought him in, re-signed Birch, re-signed Vucevic, and got Aminu in free agency. So it's like, your big splash was Al-Farouq Aminu. I'm sorry, but I can't get very excited over bringing back Al-Farouq Aminu. That was your big acquisition. So for the Magic, their outlook pretty much looks similar to last season. I would think that if they won 41 games last season, 42 games, I don't see them going much higher than that with that roster. I mean, the East is still legitimate. The Celtics are still a legitimate team. The Heat are going to be on the rise. We'll get to them very quickly here. You're looking at other teams. The Pistons are still right in the mix. The Pacers are probably going to be better. The Bucks are going to be better. The Raptors can still compete for a playoff spot with Siakam and Marc Gasol and Kyle Lowry. So there's not a lot of room for the Magic to elevate. There is room for them to decrease, lose wins. So, I mean, I don't know. I would expect them to be 40 to 42 wins, So for the Magic, I'd be happy as a fan because they're not going to drop off, right? They lost Vucevic, they probably drop off. But they're not going to really go anywhere higher than they were last season. So for the Magic, it's just a whole lot of meh. But they can take pride in having some good young players. So Aaron Gordon is still a good young player. Aaron Gordon just finished his 4th season. He is only 23 years old. By the time the season starts, he'll be approaching 24, but that still leaves some room for improvement. Aaron Gordon is going to be a nice player. I mean, he is a nice player. 16-7, 16-7-3. High flyer. He's actually improved every season. He's not bad at all. His shot, it kind of wanes sometimes, but you can still expect a little something from him. Jonathan Isaac is a name I'm going to be watching for the most improved player conversation. He might be in that group, and we're going to have to keep an eye on him as well. But going into his 3rd season, age 21, we forget sometimes he's 6'10". 6'10" with a nice handle. I mean, he's a pretty versatile player. I might vote for most improved. Maybe. I'm still thinking about it. I almost did it last season, but this is it right here. I mean, year 3, this is where you really need to be starting to figure it out. I mean, it makes sense, right? So the opportunities are going to be there. He's established as a starter. It's about that time for Jonathan Isaac to make a name for himself. But other than that, you got Fultz. Markelle Fultz is still on the team, ladies and gentlemen. He's still in the league. So Fultz, it's now or never, buddy. Get that shoulder in order, get on the court, fix that shot. And, I mean, if he is 80% of the player he was at Washington, that's a nice starter. That's a very nice starter. I'd take that any day of the week. So hopefully he's back into form somewhere near what he was at his peak. And brings you back to the playoffs. That's what we're expecting from Orlando, everybody. More the same. What we're not expecting the same from is Miami. Miami is a very different team. So to switch gears here to our last team of the Southeast, Miami is not, and I repeat, not looking to finish with the same amount of wins. I'd expect them to make a decent jump. Last season, by many measures, was disappointing. A lot of bad losses. Home record was subpar. Uh, things are just kind of all over the place. 39 and 43, negative separating score in the system, negative 0.45. From a team with that much pedigree and pride, that's not good enough. You expect to see better. Offense was atrocious at times. I was at one game last season where they scored, I believe it was 83 points against the Hawks. Couldn't even break 90. It was abysmal. I'm going to avoid the rant this time, but it was bad. It just proved to me, Heat fans, it proved to the league they need some injection of offense. And, I mean, they finished 26th in offensive rating, everybody. I mean, they were 6th in defensive rating, 6th in the entire league. But their offense was so bad, there were only 3 teams that had a worse offensive rating than they did. It just didn't matter. I mean, they were that bad at scoring the rock. So they had to change things around. And, I mean, I don't know how they actually got this to work, but, I mean, there's almost no better way to take a roster that's capped out, maximum potential, not going anywhere fast, and flip that into Jimmy Butler. That is absolute sorcery to me. Last season, their roster was, I mean, going into this season, into the 1920 season, they're capped out. And I mean capped out. Literally one of the highest payrolls in the NBA, luxury tax, the whole nine, just stripped for cash, nothing. No spending power, zero. And they turn that into Jimmy Butler. I mean, this is art, poetry in motion, everybody. I mean, you have James Johnson overpaid, Waiters overpaid. Whiteside was overpaid before they traded him. I mean, to turn this into Jimmy Butler just blew my mind. So getting into an overview of the moves they made. They drafted Tyler Hero with the 13th pick, looking pretty nice based off of Summer League. Drafted KZ Okpala, which, I mean, to be honest, I still don't really know anything about him. It's just kind of bad. It's kind of sad. But could be a nice project, good wing player in time. Lost Josh Richardson, lost Hassan Whiteside. I'm actually very glad about that one. Thank you for getting him out of town. But they acquired Jimmy Butler, as I stated before, and they acquired Myers Leonard from the Blazers in that Whiteside deal. So you lose a guy like Whiteside, you lose some rim protection, you lose some rebounding. He was one of the leading rebounders every season he was here in South Beach, which is nice. But you lose a headache, and you lose someone that became somewhat toxic. I want to use a word from Kenneth Wilson. He runs the account over on All You Can Heat on fansided.com. But he said today they shipped him off, and you get rid of a guy that's talented. He's a good center. He did a lot of great things for Miami during his time there, but he was just toxic at this point. He just didn't have a good aura about him. So he's gone. You bring in Jimmy Butler, who is a perfect fit for the Heat culture. He was caught right after signing in Miami, smoking cigars, playing cards with the whole outfit, the whole nine. This is a guy that was built to be in Miami. He's a hard worker. He's no nonsense. What does that sound like? It sounds like Eric Spoelstra. It sounds like Pat Riley. It sounds like the whole Heat staff. That's going to be a hand in glove fit. So I don't expect to be hearing any stories about these guys aren't working hard enough. These guys are playing Fortnite. I can't trust these dudes. My coaches don't work. I mean, everybody's going to come alongside him and work just as hard as he is. That's going to say a lot for him about the Heat organization. And it's going to give him a lot of faith because he's already putting a lot of faith in them. He had a team that was 4 bounces away from the finals, from making a huge move there. Kawhi Leonard kind of put a dent in all those plans, but that was a team that was a contender. He left a contender for I'm gonna be honest here, a team that's not a contender right now, Miami, very good, playoff contender for sure, but not a title contender. So for him to do that, he's putting a lot of faith, and it's kind of hard for us to say, right? I mean, this is a guy that's going to make $100 and whatever $1 million over the life of his contract, and we're saying he's putting faith in this team, but he is, because from a basketball standpoint, to leave a team that won 50, I believe it was 55 games, 54 games, to a team that won 39, you really gotta love that team. I mean, going to Miami and not having to deal with state taxes, yeah, that plays a part. But this is a team that has built a name for itself, a very good reputation, and that reputation preceded them. Whether Dwayne Wade made a case or not, Jimmy Butler saw something in the Heat that he didn't see in the Timberwolves, the Bulls at the end of his tenure, or the Sixers. And that is huge. So you bring in a guy like him with shot creation ability, his ability to guard several positions, to be a dog out there, to lead by example, that's going to be huge. He's going to be a great mentor for Justice Winslow. I mean, if Justice Winslow could look at Jimmy Butler and say, well, this is what I need to do on a night-to-night basis to be an all-star, to be a superstar, and maybe not fulfill all those requirements because I don't think he's capable of doing everything. But if he can enter the fold with Jimmy, figure out what he needs to do on offense and defense, wow, to shake that up, because he's a better playmaker than Jimmy Butler. He's not as good of a scorer. Let's get a full understanding, but he can come in and dish the rock as a point forward. Point Winslow, sign me up. I'm all down. So, the payroll is still sky high. Team salary is still at $130 million, and they're going to be just below the apron because now that they completed the sign and trade with Jimmy Butler, they can't exceed the apron, which I want to say is $131 million. So they can't go over that threshold. So for now, they really can't make any more moves. They have some non-guaranteeds on the roster. Haslam is a free agent, which I really think they just let him go, don't re-sign him. And this is what they have. So looking at Tyler Hero for a second, somebody said on Twitter yesterday that Tyler Hero could be, I think it was Klay Thompson with a handle. I don't like that. I wouldn't compare him to a guy like Klay Thompson. I would say Mike Miller with a handle. I mean, Mike Miller with a handle is a nice player because we know how good Mike Miller was for the Heat. Let's not get it messed up now. This is a guy that lost a shoe, went out and knocked down a clutch three-pointer against the Thunder in 2012. I watched it, absolutely amazed. But let's not rush into things with Tyler Hero. Let's give him time to develop at his own pace, and then we can kind of find some similarities. I mean, it's okay to compare and be like, well, he has the shooting of this player or his form looks like this. But let's not throw him into the conversation with Klay Thompson. That's lofty goals right there. That is a pretty unrealistic for a rookie. So he's a smart player who wants to win. He has a lot of pride, fits the culture very well. And Myers Leonard is a floor spacer, come in behind Bam if he does anything like he did in that playoff series in the spring, I believe it was against the Nuggets, where he just came in and just went off. I mean, I would like that, And Derrick Jones Jr., we can't forget about the guy that was involved in trade rumors. Originally, I thought he was gone, but they didn't want to do the deal with the Mavericks, which necessitated bringing in a different team to complete the deal. So they got to keep Derrick Jones Jr., which was an excellent move. I think he should stick with the Heat. Non-guaranteed contract. He's only making $1.6 million. I think he'll be worth that and then some. Easy decision. So that was the Heat summer in a nutshell. Got their draft pick. They swapped out a couple players. You brought in Leonard. You brought in KZ. Kendrick Nunn, I would think, would be their third-string point guard. And I would think in a pinch, if something were to happen to Winslow or Dragic, I'd be okay bringing in Kendrick as a backup. I mean, after that Summer League series, he's looking pretty freaking good right now. So Kendrick Nunn, very solid. Yonsei Matten, I think, would be the odd man out here. Out of the three non-guaranteed contracts, Duncan Robinson, I think, will be safe. But other than that, that's the Heat's roster. They're set. So the core is there. There's a shakeup losing Josh, but Butler's an upgrade. No one would debate that. Jimmy Butler is an upgrade. One of the 10, 15 best players in this league. He's going to do wonders for the Heat. And I would think bring them back into the playoff picture with a nice improvement. If you improve by 4 wins, that puts you at 43 wins. That's probably a playoff berth in the East. So maybe 7th or 8th seed, but I would expect them to be back in the playoffs like they're supposed to be. The team with this much talent and pride and defensive acumen should be in the playoffs. But hey, don't take my word for it. Let's go out and see what they're made of next season. So that's going to be it, guys, for this podcast. Hope you didn't get too tired of my rambling. I promise we'll be back next week with a very established guest that I think you all will enjoy. And in the meantime, feel free to go to our website. It's going to be bcbasketball.info. That's where all the podcasts will be. That's where the YouTube videos will be, blog posts, forums, and more. Please don't miss that. Miss the content over there. And then, of course, BC Basketball 2. That's where you find us on social media. That's going to be Instagram, and that's also going to be Twitter. So that's where you can dive in, see some analysis, see some sneak peeks on what's coming your way on Business Casual. So until then, everybody, enjoy this off season. The NBA season will be here before you know it. I know it's kind of the dog days right now. We're in a time where rumors are flying and we're just looking back at old tape, but hang in there. I promise we'll make it together. And next week, we'll be back with another podcast. I won't spoil the surprise. I won't tell you what division we're covering, but we do have 5 more weeks to this, 5 more divisions. So promise you it's going to be worth your while. Please consider subscribing, following if you don't already, and we'll be back real soon with more content. So until then, everybody, take it easy and enjoy this eventful, to say the least, NBA offseason.